Hi, I'm Dr. Tronél Hellberg, and in this video clip, I'm going to look at the didactics of history of music. Now, like you and I know, history of music can so easily be a very boring subject, especially for the learners. So it's our duty as teachers to make it interesting and fun for our learners. And I hope that I'm going to share some tips and tricks with you in this video clip that will help you teach it more effortlessly and make it more enjoyable for the learners. So the first thing that I would like to share with you is to always integrate interesting stories. And by that, I mean funny, even embarrassing stories about composers, maybe letters that they wrote. And I always integrate this book. It's a wonderful book called The Musician's World. Great composers in their letters. It looks like this. And it's really a fantastic book to actually use in your lessons and to give the learners a bit of a laugh. And just to show you, I'm going to share one of the stories in here. It's a letter that Beethoven wrote to his publisher, Breitkopf und Härtel. Learners love this, okay? He writes, mistakes. You yourselves are one big mistake. I have to keep my copyist and myself perpetually on the rush if I am to prevent my published work from consisting solely of mistakes. The Leipzig Musiktribunal seems unable to produce a single decent proofreader, and at that, you sent off the work even before you received the corrected proofs. In major works with printed single parts, the bars should at least be counted, but one can see from the Fantasia, etc., what happens. And if you look at the piano reduction of the Egmont Overture, you will see that a whole bar has been left out. Okay, so this already would make a lesson much more interesting and enjoyable. Learners love stories. So let me show you what I do when I teach history of music. I'm going to quickly just share my screen with you. Okay, so like I said, the first thing is to integrate interesting stories into your lesson, okay? Then the next thing that you need to remember when you teach history of music is to place it in context of world events and developments at the time. The thing is, if you do it like this, learners will realize that music history is not isolated from other events, and it will actually help them to study it. Then also with this, it's very important and helpful to use a timeline so that they can see, where in history can you place the different music events, world wars, and also, of course, the lives of your composers. Then also a great thing to do is to integrate it with form analysis. And when you do this, you can very easily integrate games into your lesson plan. Okay? For example, what you can do is you can play a music example and then you allow learners to imagine the story that unfolds in their minds, or they can draw it, they can even write a story about what they imagine the music to portray. And of course, you can also let the learners share this with their peers in the class. Then also a great activity that you can build into your lesson is for the learners to create a listening map. So by that, I mean this. So here's the march from the Nutcracker. So it's in ternary form, and then all the various motives have been drawn. So I got this, this is just an example that I got off the internet. And for each of the motives, the learners can just draw their own representation of it. But that gives them a visual map of the music piece. Okay, so there you can see that you've got your A section, bum, 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 bum. Okay, and then it repeats. And there are all the different motives that you get in the A section, and then you've got your B section, and then back to the A section. Okay, so this is really a fun thing to integrate. And of course, it trains your learners' ears to listen for dynamics, articulation, key changes, different instruments, the texture, nuances, etc. Okay, so really a great practical way for learners to understand the form structure, but then also to integrate it in its historical context. Okay, then the next thing that I would like to share with you is studying history of music. Okay, now this is not officially something that you need to teach your learners, but so often it's a skill that no one else teaches them. Okay, so you might be the only one that will teach them these skills, and that's why I decided to actually integrate this into this didactics video. Okay, so the first tip that I would like to share with you is to teach your learners that it's like a story. History is really just a story that unfolds. Okay, and if they understand that, it's easier to actually just memorize it and write down the information. Then also, when you're studying the composers, it's a good idea to integrate different senses to help the learners identify and remember the composers. Okay, so you listen to their music. I showed you that form activity. They can even taste something. Okay, because if you taste something, it might actually just spark a memory of what you were thinking about, what you were studying at the time. Feel something, okay, so textures, to see something, to smell something, okay. So your senses are really very great or great tools to integrate when you are studying history. Okay, and then also, of course, look for interesting information from the composers' biographies, okay, and incorporate that into the lesson. So I just shared that interesting story. It didn't really have anything to do with any of Beethoven's works, but it was interesting and learners will remember it. Then the next thing is to really encourage learners to make proper summaries of their work. To tell them that their summaries need to be finished at least, a week before their test or exam, and that they should read through these summaries before going to sleep. I can't emphasize this enough. Okay, because if you do that, there's just something that happens in your brain and your brain remembers it. And then what they can do the next morning is just to see what they can remember of the work they read through. And they really don't need to study. They can just read through it. Their minds will remember it. And then to see what they remember in the morning. And then they can just fill the gaps of the information that they basically omitted. Then the next thing that you can do is to teach them certain techniques of memorization. Okay, and I'm just going to share some techniques with you because this might even help you. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to share is to teach them to chunk down large amounts of information into smaller bits. Okay, that's very important. And then to make associations with, the visual images that they create in their minds, okay, and encourage them to make abstract associations. combine past memories, funny visualizations into it. Okay, this really helps to remember things, and then they can use rhymes, use colors in their summaries, integrate visual cues, and tell them to write down the information, not type it out. Okay, it's very important. It's a sensory experience for your body, for your brain, when you write down information. Encourage them to actually say it out loud, because then they hear what they say. Okay, to act the story. I remember when I was studying history of music, I was actually just getting up on my bed, standing. That was my stage, and I just acted out everything. They can use flashcards, and of course they can also draw mind maps. So these are just a few things that I thought I would like to share with you and help you to make your lessons more interesting when it gets to theory of, to history of music, and also to help your learners to actually study their work easier. And that's it from me in terms of the didactics of history of music.